Thanks, Taoiseach. The next speaker is the Tánaiste. You have 10 minutes.
Cairlig, I welcome the opportunity to speak in support of the bill that is before the House tonight. This bill, when it is enacted, will finally bring to an end the Irish Bank Resolution Corporation. The IBRC is made up of what remains of Anglo-Irish Bank and the Irish Nationwide Building Society. These two institutions, names that will live on in ignominy, are forever associated with the recklessness and the greed of a tiny clique that brought this country to the edge of financial ruin. These banks and the people who ran them, and the golden circle around them, were the very roots of the crisis which has caused so much distress to the Irish people. In liquidating this institution, we are doing what should have been done on the night of the blanket bank guarantee. That great error of policy and politics sought to keep Anglo and the Irish Nationwide Building Society in existence when they should at that point have been put into a proper resolution process. This government is doing what the last government should have done. We are ending Anglo, not scrambling to keep it alive. That is what didn't happen in 2008, and the history of what followed is well known. The state took on a risk in giving a blanket guarantee to Anglo and to other banks that it was ultimately unable to bear, and the last government was forced to seek international assistance to sustain the finances of the state. Tonight we are wiping these two institutions out of existence for good. We are winding up these institutions and transferring the remaining work of managing out their loans to NAMA. This is part of a broader package of banking measures that we are working on with our partners in Europe, which is intended to deal with some of the outstanding issues that remain in our banking system. As the House is aware, we are continuing our negotiations with the European institutions on other aspects of this package, including how to deal with the promissory note. The winding up of the IBRC is one component of that package. Negotiations will continue on the other elements. This is the first necessary step in resolving the promissory note issue. This government, when it was formed, committed itself to the renegotiation of the bad promissory note deal that was entered into by Fianna Fáil and its supporters. There were those who said, when this government was formed, that the renegotiation of the promissory note deal couldn't be done. There were then those who said that we wouldn't succeed in those negotiations. There were those who predicted failure at every twist and turn. And it seems to me that there are some in this House whose biggest difficulty tonight is that the government is actually succeeding. During this week, a series of rumours began to circulate about the future of the IBRC, which, in the opinion of the government, constituted a potential financial risk. Today, the Minister for Finance took the view that these risks have become too great to sustain. Accordingly, and in line with the contingency plan that has been in place for some time in the Department of Finance, he moved to secure the company, and we are tonight moving to formally provide for its liquidation. This action is necessary in order to secure the value of the assets that it holds. Those assets, which are valued at €12 billion, are being secured in the public interest. I'm conscious, Canon Corla, that this will be an anxious time for the members of the staff of the IBRC. And I acknowledge, and I think every member in this House acknowledge, that no blame rests with the staff who worked in the IBRC. Many of the staff have joined the bank in recent times and have worked diligently to secure the value of its assets in the public interest. It has, of course, been regrettably necessary to make this announcement in a short notice. It is intended that the majority of those staff will be employed by the liquidator at least for some time. The Minister for Finance has set out the legal standing of the employees and the protections that are provided for them in law. I want to emphasise, Count Corla, and to reassure the House, and it was a matter raised by Deputy McGrath, that the legal cases which are currently being taken by our IBRC will not be affected by the liquidation. In effect, where legal proceedings are currently being taken by IBRC against borrowers in default, these will now be pursued by NAMA. Moving on the liquidation of the IBRC is of itself an important step in the process of programme exit. It has been the Government's view for some time that eliminating the legacy risk and the possibility of so-called tail risk in IBRC is important in the ongoing process of rebuilding confidence in Ireland, which is a necessary part of programme exit. By eliminating these two most notorious institutions, markets will have a clearer view on this risk. Other steps which have been taken in recent times, including the sale of the contingent capital in the Bank of Ireland and the agreement reached to examine the term extension of European programme loans. As we have taken these steps, we have continued to see the yield on Irish government debt declining towards far more sustainable levels. This bill is another step in that process. It is also part of a wider package of measures that we are negotiating with our European partners, negotiations that will continue and which we hope to bring to a satisfactory conclusion soon. The Irish people have endured great loss and great difficulties at the hands of the bankers who ran these banks. The measures taken to save them were wrong, and the European Union IMF programme of support that followed was, in the view of this government, unfair and unworkable. Since coming to office, we have worked with the Troika and European partners to renegotiate the programme and to redesign it bit by bit, and we are succeeding. Tonight we are taking another important step in that process, and further steps will follow. There is no one step that will right all the wrongs that the Irish people have endured. There is no fairy tale solution that will bring us back to where we ought to be. What we can do, and what we are doing, is patiently negotiating our way through a series of issues, working step by step to deal with the three-legged crisis that we inherited, the crisis in banking, the crisis in the public finances, and in employment. Today is a watershed. The significance of liquidating Anglo-Irish Bank will not be lost on the Irish people. But what is most important is that this is another step forward towards a day that we can finally face forward as a people, when the past can finally recede into the distance, and when Ireland and the Irish people can see the future that they truly deserve. I'm very disappointed, Count Corla, at the contributions that have been made by some members of the opposition. In fairness to Deputy McGrath, he made a thoughtful contribution. The only piece that was missing from the speech was, of course, that what we are doing here is clearing up a mess that was caused by Fianna Fáil in the first place. But I have to say that the contributions of other members of the House were, in fact, quite remarkable. Here we had member after member, whether from Sinn Féin or the various ranges of views that are contained on the opposition benches, people who had spent the last 2 years calling for the liquidation and the winding up of the IBRC. And on the very night that we introduced, the legislation to do just that, the only thing that we could hear from these deputies was them scrambling to find some kind of an argument on which to oppose it. And I have to say that the arguments that were found were bizarre, ridiculous, and bear no examination by anybody who wants to see a serious debate on these issues.